attack, and I say, my God, I don't know how this all happened. I didn't know, I honestly didn't know that people were going to die one day, and I'm so very sorry that happened, and the people that didn't deserve it were just lost their lives, and I know that...
How did it all happen? It was mid-1975 when he attended what he thought was a harmless house party in the Bronx. He would make some new friends there. One of them was a 23-year-old man named Michael Carr.
He was talking almost like a scientist. He seemed to have a lot of knowledge of the occult and everything, and I had always been fascinated by that, but I never shared that with anybody, you know. We would have our chants and so forth, and our rituals, and I did begin to witness some animal sacrifices, which at first, that was like kind of, you know, just weird.
At the urging of his peers, Berkowitz bought occult books, including the Satanic Bible. Berkowitz studied his occult books while alone at night at his guard job on the docks of Manhattan. It was preparation for his formal initiation into the group.
We were at a park, I guess it was Untermeyer, you know, it was long ago, and we had this circle formed, and we said, okay, let's start chanting now. Let's call the names of the demons. Let's call Satan's name. Let's call Lucifer. Let's bring him, let's summon him from the netherworld, from the air, and let's now ask him to anoint you, to knight you as one of his loyal soldiers, to do his bidding, to do his will.
Did there come a time when this group, when the crimes that they were committing, you know, went beyond animal sacrifice? Were there arsons or something?
Yes, there were definitely a lot of arsons. These demons wanted fire, and
This Lucifer?
Yeah, right. This was Lucifer, and it was Molech, you know, and another god who wanted fire sacrifices. Those of us who had, at this time, dedicated our lives to Satan's service, to be his soldiers, and we had to create an atmosphere that would be conducive to his coming upon the world scene. Our goal was to bring chaos to the city, which tragically we did succeed in doing, in bringing the city of New York to its knees and so forth, which was part of the plan. I never knew, I never thought that the day would come when we would start to kill people. I never knew even that one day was going to come when I would break the law.
But David Berkowitz was about to do just that. During a trip down south to visit his adoptive father, Berkowitz would make a swing through Houston, Texas. There, in June of '76, he had an old Army buddy buy him a Charter Arms .44 caliber Bulldog revolver that he would take back with him to New York.
Were there different guns involved?
Yeah, I think they were, yeah. Because other people had handled, I know, mine, and there was a number of all different kinds of weapons. As far as those 44 Bulldogs, they were, I think, maybe 2 or 3, if I can gather correctly, that were around.
Well, let's talk about that for a bit, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, there were a series of 8 attacks known as the Son of Sam killings.
Yeah.
Did you do all of them?
I was at all of them. I was at, more or less at all of them, scouting the areas and reporting back on likely targets and things, and I did not pull the trigger at every single one of them. And I believe the police do know that. I think that they were able to realize that after time, although it's not important, I mean, because I did do some of the crimes. I did take some lives, and I'm very sorry for that. And I look back and I say, my God, you know, how did this all come about? How did this all begin? And I just don't know anymore. I don't know.
At these crime scenes, David, were there always extra people, accomplices on the scene, assisting the shooter in one way or another?
Yes.
What roles would those people play?
Sometimes to be prepared to drive away, others to take a gun if need be, or just to scout the area and so forth. And that was basically it, you know. And we, of course, everyone had played a role as far as the chanting and the praying. Everyone had a role in that, and understanding that, you know, this was going to be another sacrifice to our gods, bunch of scumbags that they were, our gods, Lucifer and his crew, and we said, yeah, this is going to be another one for you, you know. And I said,
what the world knows as the Son of Sam shootings, where did that just happen, or did this, or were these, or did they just want more violence and they planned that they were going to do this?
Well, there was there's certain days that within a time frame that the greater sacrifices had been called for. You know, a fire is okay on a night in whatever, but sometimes there were different holidays and so forth.
You mean satanic holidays?
Yeah,
witchcraft holidays.
Right.
Would they try to do some of these incidents approximate to those holidays?
As close as would be possible, because so many circumstances were beyond our control.
Is that how they viewed these shootings, or at least most of these shootings, as like the ultimate sacrifice? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a total waste. Made no sense. Made no sense. At the time we couldn't see that. At the time we didn't. You know. But you got to a point, and you got to be in it to understand. You have to be in it to understand, and most people would never understand. They say that's too far-fetched to even be real. Oh, well, what do they know? They don't know. They too, you know, just didn't understand anything. But I think at the beginning, maybe they began to see something developing, but they, for some reason, for whatever reasons, they just stuck with the one-person scenario and held that. They locked into that, which is understandable, because I can understand that, because first of all, it's just something beyond the average person's comprehension that any type of cult could be operating that are hurting people in order to appease evil spirits and so forth. That sounds so bizarre. Well, I guess it was summer of 1977 when I first realized that the devil was a liar. At that time, about 10 o'clock in the evening, I think it was August 10th, a number of police officers surrounded my car and pointed guns at me from every direction and said, you know, freeze, you're under arrest. I was told that, you know, if you betray this group, you know, we're all brothers and sisters now. If you betray this group, you have to understand, we're going to get your family. We're going to get them, you know, because Satan won't tolerate anyone being a turncoat. There's no Judas Iscariot's here. You know what happened to Judas, don't you?
Earlier in our interview, David Berkowitz had made a sensational statement.
There were a series of 8 attacks known as the Son of Sam killings.
Yeah.
Did you do all of them?
I was at all of them. I was at, more or less at all of them, scouting the areas and reporting back on likely targets and things, and I did not pull the trigger at every single one of them. And I believe the police do know that. I think that they were able to realize that after time, although it's not important, I mean, because I did do some of the crimes.
You may not think that it's all that relevant as to what you did or what you didn't do, but I can guarantee you that to the public and the families and all, it's very important. The survivors, the victims.
Well, from what I could remember, so much of it I really want to forget. I don't even dwell on it anymore. It's such a nightmare to me that to even...
But there were 8 attacks. You just said you didn't do all of them. Donna Laurie in the Bronx, was that you?
Yeah.
Carl De Niro, Rosemary Keenan in Queens.
No.
That wasn't you. Joanne Lamino, Donna DeMasi in Queens.
No.
Christine Freund in Queens.
No.
Virginia Voskarician in Queens.
No.
You didn't do any of those in Queens?
No, I was there. I was in that area.
Okay, back to the Bronx. We had the shootings of Valentina Suriani and Alex Esau. Was that you? And we go back out to Queens by the Elephas Disco out in Bayside. Judy Placido, Sal Lupo. Was that you?
No.
And finally, probably one of the most infamous shootings in the history of the United States, the murder of Stacy Moskowitz, the blinding of Robert Violante in Brooklyn. Was that you? Is it true that John and Michael Carr were part of this group?
Yes, yes they were.
The evidence I had uncovered said that, determined that John Carr shot Joanne Lamino and Donna DeMasi in Queens.
If I believe correctly, yes.
This is John Carr, and this again is the police sketch of the Lamino DeMasi gunman. Christine's boyfriend, John Deal, who survived the attack, told me Berkowitz's account of that evening in his original confession was blatantly false. Deal said he had accidentally bumped into Berkowitz on the street just minutes before the shooting, and that Berkowitz could not have been in position in time to fire the shots that killed Christine. Berkowitz also addressed one of the most critical mysteries of the Moskowitz murder in Brooklyn, the fact that both his own cream and black Ford Galaxy and a yellow Volkswagen were spotted at the scene.
They had one of the biggest searches in the history of New York City looking for a particular yellow Volkswagen.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Was the gunman in that Volkswagen?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know if the person who owned that Volkswagen is still alive or dead, or do you know?
I don't know. From what I was able to gather, most of the people that, after I was arrested, had begun to die one by one. And the whereabouts of a number of them, I don't know.
Any of the 44 shootings done by females?
Yes.
Would that have been one shooting or two?
One I know of, possibly two.
Now says that although he was present at all of the murders, he wasn't always the
They
hitman.
moved on.
You mean before the shooting occurred?
Right.
You would have been out of the neighborhood before the
Yeah,
shooting
some
occurred?
of them, sure.
I see. So there were some instances you didn't even see them happen.
Right.
He says a case in point was the murder of Stacy Moskowitz and the blinding of Robert Violante in the last Son of Sam attack in Brooklyn. There is strong evidence to support his claim that he was not the gunman in this shooting. First, a young man named Tommy Zano was parked directly in front of the victims and watched the attack in his rear-view mirror. He described the gunman as having messy blonde hair and a light gray shirt that was out of his trousers.
He looked like he was in good shape, because after he fired the shots, he took right off it, back into the park fast.
Do you believe it was David Berkowitz who pulled the trigger that night?
I didn't believe it was him then, and I don't believe it's him now.
Why?
Because of his shape when he took off and ran. And then a week later, we seen David Berkowitz, and what he looked like, I don't think he was physically capable of doing that.
This is the sketch police drew from Zano's description, but it was never released to the public, even though cops described Zano as their best witness in all the Son of Sam shootings. And also, there's the issue of the parking ticket, which Berkowitz received at the scene. According to the statement of Cecilia Davis, a resident in the neighborhood, Berkowitz could not have killed Moskowitz because of that citation.
No, he couldn't, because I seen him taking off the ticket. He was still watching the police officers giving the rest of the cars tickets, and he followed the police officer. He could never go back to the playground because I seen him.
Best as I recall, I drove away. There was a police car there, and I drove behind them and followed them for a while to see where they were going, and then they turned off somewhere, and I continued going.
Your confession wasn't true. Did you, in fact, try to stop that shooting from occurring?
Sure.
Could you tell me about that? Was this when you saw your car was ticketed?
Right, yeah. I just wanted to get out of there. I felt uncomfortable about the whole thing, and I felt that this was pointless. I was just sick of everything, and...
Finally, I had the opportunity to ask David Berkowitz directly.
Was there a present or former Yonkers police officer involved in this group in any way?
Yes, there was.
Would that have been one former officer or more than one, or do you know?
I think just one that I know of.
I know you don't like talking about the so-called Son of Sam letters, but I have one question. Would I be correct in saying that those letters were a group effort rather than the work of one individual?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was a group thing. Again, part of the role, or the goal, was to create an atmosphere of terror. You know, into Satanism, we felt that, you know, it was part of the thing, to create that atmosphere of terror or fear or whatever.
Were any of the 44 shootings done by females?
Yes.
Would that have been one shooting or two?
One I know of, possibly two.
Would that have been the Virginia Voskarician shooting and or the Carl De Niro shooting?
Well, I know that Carl's was definitely a woman. And the other one I'm not quite sure about.
That would have been the person with the ski cap, watch cap on, sweater?
Yeah.
Would that have been a woman?
Yeah.
Now, would that woman have been from New York or elsewhere?
I believe from elsewhere. I'm not exactly sure.
You mean you didn't know the woman that well?
Well.
Meaning, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
It was time to change the subject. But Berkowitz had exposed one of the glaring contradictions in the Voskarician murder. Two suspects were observed at that scene. This one was clearly Berkowitz. Yet in his confession to being the lone son of Sam, he claimed to be this person in the ski cap, the shooter. It simply didn't make sense.
Could you describe what role you played?
Well, I just, like some of the others, just to walk around and be a lookout and everything. And
confession about the dog smoke and all of that.
Yeah.
Was that part of the cover story?
yes, it was. Yeah. But you know, sadly the psychiatrists or the psychologists, they're so blind. You know, I tried to explain to them what was happening, but they couldn't grasp it, who Sam really was. And I hate to talk about this because people have made a joke about this for so very long, you know, the talking dog and everything. And Sam, but basically, I had given them the whole thing in a nutshell, and they never quite caught on that the highest ranking demon of the Druids is Sam Hain. S-A-M-H-A-I-N, that's how you say right. Sam Hain. And these people who died, the victims, sadly, were for him.
So this worked two ways. You had Sam Hain, and you also had Sam Carr and his sons.
Yeah, right.
So would I be correct that the term Son of Sam, or actually Sons of Sam, worked on a couple of levels? Is that true?
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Why did you take the rap for all of these people?
But this time I had really sold myself out to our little group, and I was like a gung-ho soldier for them, and so I just was sticking loyal, you know, said, well, you know, I'm going to stand my ground, and for many years, I just kind of laid the path to myself. I had done that purposely. I also felt very guilty, too. I felt like, well, what the hell, you know? I did shed innocent blood. I hurt people that didn't deserve to be hurt, and so what the hell if I take the rap for 2 or 10?
David Berkowitz was just entering the 2nd year of his life sentence when a would-be executioner came calling.
Another inmate tried to take my life by cutting my throat with a prison-made razor weapon.
It took 56 stitches to close the wound, and Berkowitz wears a deep scar as a reminder of the vicious slashing.
I was lucky to be alive.
Is that the scar?
Yeah, that's the scar, yeah. When I went down to the infirmary, the doctor there who stitched me up said it was a miracle that I lived.
He still doesn't like to talk about the attack, and he has never said who did it. Berkowitz says he fought the influence of Satanism until the late 80s, when he found God.
I don't think that if I would have still been out there, I probably would have died, just like the Carr brothers, just like others. If I didn't become a Christian, I may have died a long time ago. I truly believe that.
Berkowitz had flirted with Christianity several times in his life, but he says his true conversion came in 1988, when a fellow inmate gave him a pocket Bible to read.
The words began to seem very, very real, you know, in other words, as if God were talking to me, you know. It says, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles.
And you saw yourself.
Yeah, and I saw myself, you know, and it said, I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all my fears. And I was saying, you know, boy, you know, I made such a mess of my life, and does the Lord even hear me? Will he even pay attention to a sinner like me? And but one day, and I even forgot where it was, I was reading a passage of Scripture, and the words just touched my heart so much that I started to just kind of break down and cry.
The Lord has brought us a long way. Yes, he has.
Dickerman says Berkowitz practices what he preaches, teaching a Bible class and by volunteering to work with emotionally troubled inmates.
Do you feel the pain day by day for the victims and the innocent who die?
Yeah, sure. I can't imagine the hardship that they go through, the ones that are left behind, even some of the ones that were wounded. Some got hurt pretty bad, and there's nothing I can do. I pray for them. I pray for them.